Welcome to the Vintage Ballers podcast, hosted by Brad Coreno. On this episode, we are going to have NBA veteran Chris Childs on the show. Chris attended Boise State University, where he was the 1989 Big Sky Player of the Year. He then went on to play in the CBA before entering the NBA in 1994, where he played 9 seasons for the New Jersey Nets, New York Knicks, and Toronto Raptors. So without further ado, please welcome Chris Childs.
No, I follow you on Instagram, and I like the reminder of what basketball was like back then. I think the young guys need to know how the game was played and how it's progressed and evolved. And it's good to reminisce and see some of those guys and see the shorts and, you know, how guys are dressed. It's quite funny.
I love it. I mean, Chris, I grew up, so back then I was a kid. I was, 10, 11, 12 years old in the mid-90s. And my brother was a good basketball player back in the day. He played at an NAI school, but he was a real good high school player and graduated in 91 with Weber and Jalen and those guys. So I was in love with basketball since I was a kid. And, the NBA was like a safe haven for me in the 90s because I went through a lot of back and forth with my parents' divorce and everything. So you guys were like my safe haven. I just watched college and NBA basketball all the time. So it's really cool to, guys like you. I mean, we grew up. I mean, we all talked about my generation knows everybody that played back then. That's just how it was. Everyone watched the NBA, everyone watched baseball, and everyone watched football. So it was one of the things where, to me, the 90s NBA was a pretty iconic era for many reasons.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, 80s, 90s, Sunday games, hearing the theme song come on and the different rivalries, trying at the Bulls, big Pistons and teams that were said later on the Spurs. Now, it was very competitive, and it was good that kids can take something from that and use that to, stray away from the distraction of, divorces and getting in trouble in school and the streets and stuff. So I think we had a lot of influence on a lot of people, and I'm glad it was in a positive way.
You did. And again, I could tell you, and even when I was younger, I mean, college basketball back then seemed different in the sense where people stayed longer. I mean, you had a lot of those guys staying for 4 years, and, it was just a different feel back then. Not that I still watch basketball today. I love the NBA, but back then it was just different. There was more rivalries to me, like more real rivalries. I mean, you guys had the Knicks and the Heat. You had the Pacers Bulls, the Knicks Bulls. I mean, you go on and on. So, and they were just, nasty rivalries. It was physical, it was aggressive, it was personal. And, I enjoyed that kind of basketball. I thought that was, the way it should be played. And like you said, the 80s and the 90s kind of set that bar. So, one of the reasons I started that page is because my love for that era. And I knew a lot of people in my age group, in 30s and early 40s, also loved that era. So it was kind of something I always, I had no idea all these different players to start following, but I thought that was pretty cool after a while when I started getting, now I think I have close to 50 guys that follow the page. So I think people appreciate looking, like you said, looking back at that era and how basketball was played, during that era. So I want to start off with you. You grew up in Bakersfield, California. When did you first fall in love with the game of basketball?
Oh man, I think fell in love with sports in general when, in the crib. I remember my mom or my dad gave me a drumstick. And that's how I fell in love with drums, but I held it up like it was a bat. So then my brother, he was older than I was, and he is older than I am, and he took me everywhere. And he was a great basketball player, went to Oregon State. Unfortunately, he didn't continue on with the game, but everything that I was able to do to him allowed me to tell him and see the game and start playing against old guys. So I started playing competitive against 14 and 15-year-olds at the age of 8, and holding my own. So that's when I knew that I could play the game. In 4th grade, I was playing on 7th grade team. So I was well equipped to go out there and compete. And basketball is my favorite sport. Baseball is my favorite sport, and I
Oh,
was good
really?
at base. But growing up, everybody was like, you're not as good as your brother in basketball, so you're not. That's why you play baseball. So it was let me see how good I really am in basketball. And so uh, I had got some offers. I got drafted, but in baseball, I fell back in love with basketball. And growing up in Bakersfield was just so competitive in the parks, in the neighborhood and streets. So I was able to maneuver away from trouble growing up in Bakersfield.
Now, growing up out there, do you have a favorite team or a favorite player? Oh, Chris, you there? I lost you for a second.
Brad, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I lost you for a second.
I'm here. Okay. Yeah. So, I love watching Dr. J.
Mm-hmm.
On the East Coast, I just enjoy watching him, and then watching, Clyde Frazier play for the Knicks, which we wouldn't get too many games, especially games in California, but we would get, Philly because they had that rivalry with Boston, and Boston was winning, champs if the Lakers weren't. So I was able to see the 76ers play. But I just, I grew up just liking guys that compete. It wasn't anybody that I, kind of, wanted to be like, but the way Clyde played the game defensively and how he walked up, and he was just so smooth. I kind of, drifted towards him a lot growing up.
Very cool. Yeah, those Knicks teams, and I mean those Sixers teams with Mo Cheeks and those guys. I mean that I was a little kid, in the '80s, a tiny kid. But my brother, again, he was the one. He's 10 years older than me, so he would always have those games on. So I grew up with, the Showtime
Yeah,
Lakers and the Bird Celtics. And
Mo Cheeks,
Mo
Andrew
Cheeks and
Tony,
Tony. Yep. And I think Charles came a little bit later, but
Jones,
yep.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean that team was loaded.
it was a
I mean,
dope team.
so I mean those '80s
Bobby
teams.
Jones.
Yep. Yeah, I mean I loved. Like I started watching. I think it was Mike Gaminsky on those teams. I think he was on some of those teams.
Mike played when I think he
was on the
played when
Nets.
Mahorn came.
You're right. He was on
Yeah,
the
he
Nets.
was Nets when he came when Mahorn, but they had Bobby Jones, Steve Nicks, Will Jones, Clint Richardson.
That's right.
Man, it's another. I forget the other big center, thick guy, but I remember Clint Richardson was another guard that came to the bench. Mo Cheeks, Sedell Street played for him later on.
Sedell, wow.
So
Yep.
yeah, they had a really nice roster.
Now, when you went to Boise State, and I saw that you were the 1989 Big Sky Player of the Year, which is pretty impressive. Chris, why Boise State? Was there a certain reason? Was it just, did it catch your eye? Was it something, was the coach there? Why them?
Well, the first reason was when I was coming out of high school, I was highly recruited by teams out west. Not a lot, but there was a lot of teams. I was recruited by SMU, UNLV, probably about 30, 35 schools.
Wow.
But they kind of, they labeled me militant. And the reason they labeled me that because I felt that the SAT and the ACT test was towards minorities. It was setting us up for failure because a lot of the questions on there, from the environment and economic life that we grew up in, a lot of those questions didn't fit our eye that we saw on an everyday basis. So I spoke about it at school rallies. I spoke about it in the newspaper. And so I didn't have the support of school principal or the SRO officer or nobody at the school other than a few teachers had my back on it. So once it got out there, the schools kind of, backed off because they put in the paper that I was militant, which I was far from militant. I just felt that what they were trying to feed me didn't taste right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spoke on it. And then after, having a talk with my dad, rest in peace, who was city councilman of Bakersfield at the time, he said, why don't you go ahead and take the test and just blow it out the waters and prove everybody wrong. And then when those schools come back, you don't have to go to those schools. And so I took the test, blew them out the water, and I had known Bobby Dye, who was the coach at Boise State. He coached at our local college, Cal State Bakersfield, in my hometown. And so when I went I went to SMU first on a visit. At the time when I got there, I found out that they were getting the death penalty because of John Concact. He ended up playing for the Hawks.
Yep, I remember that.
That's
Big
something
center.
about
Yep.
accepted money. Yeah, so
Yep.
they put them on probation for 2 years. And so as I'm flying back to California, I get the call from UNLV, Tarkanian, and he wanted me to come, but he told me that I would come off the bench because Greg Anthony was going to start. And I'm like, how are you going to say he's going to start when we haven't even competed and I had just gave him 35 when he was at Portland State? Because he started off at Portland
I didn't know that.
State, then he started off at Portland State, and then he went to UNLV his sophomore year.
Now was Stacey Augmon already there and J.R. Ryder, those guys?
No. This was the year that was the year that Moses Scurry, Greg Anthony was coming in.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, and so this would have been the following year. So I was like, nah, I'm not gonna put myself in that situation. So I called Coach Dye at Boise State and said, I want to come on a visit. I'm landing in California. I'll get right back on the plane and come there right now. And if I like what I see, I'll sign. And I got there. It was a challenge because there wasn't a lot of blacks in the community, but there was a lot of blacks on the sports teams, whether it was football, basketball, track, whatever. And I just fell in love with him telling me that I would have the opportunity to start. And when I asked him, I said, well, who's your starting guard? He's like, he's a senior. He's from Oxnard, California. And you'll probably have to, come off. I said, no, I'm not coming off the bench. I said, where is he? And so he said, he's in the weight room. So my little skinny self at the time was 165 pounds with a jerry curl. I walk in the weight room and I walk up to him, and he's 6'3", senior, muscles and everything. I walk up to him, I say, hey, I'm taking your spot. So be ready. Don't take offense to coming off the bench. And he looked at me and laughed and looked at the coaches, and they nodded like, yeah, he's serious. And, from that point on, every day in practice, I went at him. I went at whoever was in my way because I wanted to start. And the rest is history.
I love that. Yeah, I never knew the story behind that. So after Boise, you went to the CBA for 4 years, I believe. 5. Okay. First of all, what was your experience like in the CBA? And second of all, how did it prepare you for the NBA?
And the CBA, when you come out of college and you're expected to get drafted, everybody's telling you should be drafted. You get put in Sports Illustrated as one of the best guards come out the West, with Gary Payton, Tim Hardaway, Dana Barrows, we're all coming out at the same time. Rod Strickland, a good friend of mine. And you don't get drafted, it's devastating. I went in the room and, locked the door and had a, draft party at the house, and it didn't happen. So you have to regroup. You have to be a strong-willed individual. And then you get to the CBA and thinking okay, I should be in the NBA, and you're not really taking that level of basketball serious, where it's guys there that are just as hungry as you or even more because they've been there, but the level of basketball is high level of basketball. And so I wasn't prepared the first year because I got traded, 2 or 3 times within the first year. And then probably after the end of the third year, I finally took it serious because that was when things were, out of control in my life, with my marriage, drinking and hanging out and stuff. So I had to go and get that under control, because if I didn't, I would have been a CBA for life, and that's not what I wanted. I knew that physically I had all the tools to play in the NBA, but as you know, being around the game and talking to people, the game is 90% mental.
Mm-hmm.
It's 10% physical, because everybody can play, but can you play back-to-back games? Can you put use the 20 hours of the rest of the 24-hour day when you're not practicing? Are you able to maintain a healthy lifestyle so that you can continue to play for 82 games a season? So are you able to run a ball club, because you're not just responsible for yourself, you're responsible for 14 other guys on the team to get them ready to go out there and play at a high level. So there's a lot of nuances to the game that I wasn't really taking serious, and the CBA taught me that, because you had guys, I've never seen that much talent in one league other than the NBA, but these guys were so hungry and they would do anything to win. I mean, anything. I saw the jump ball, we're at the jump ball circle. And you know how guys stand next to each other at the jump ball circle. The guy on my team, his name was Ray, called him Sugar Ray. And the other name, I haven't seen him in years, his name was Dexter Shouts. Dexter Shouts looked like a 6'3", 6'4" Larry Jones.
Just
and
ripped.
He turned, and Ray was our leading scorer. Huh?
Is it just ripped like LJ?
Oh yeah, just I mean, he had muscles in his head, in his face. He looked like one of the cavity creeps on the Crest commercial. And so this guy, and Ray was our leading scorer. And Dexter turns to Ray and said, "Not tonight," and spit in his face.
Are you kidding? He spit in his face?
Spit in his face.
Oh my God.
Ray didn't do anything. And I was like, no way. And he was no good for that game.
Oh shit, man. I would have been. I mean, was there any tension after that in the team or no?
Of course. It was, I mean, we went after the guy and Ray just stood there. I mean, I think that was my second year in the league, and because that's one thing, spitting. That's
a no.
That is the most disgusting thing.
Yeah,
yeah, man.
Wow, that's a heck of a story.
Yeah. A lot of things to me, but
yeah, that's not one. I don't think anybody would be too happy with that. Wow.
No, so that was just one of the many stories that went on in the CBA. The 15-hour bus rides. You had to share a room with another guy, and one guy might like to smoke marijuana. I had one roommate, and I'm gonna tell you, Perry Moss. His name is Perry.
You're throwing him under the bus. I love it.
Yeah, I'm throwing him under the bus. That's my brother, man. He's such a good dude. He was my roommate, and this cat stretched all night long. He was in such good shape, and it'll be 2 a.m, and all you hear is bones cracking. I'm like, what the waka flocka? And so yeah, the stories, man, great memories. Wouldn't change them for the world. Met a lot of great people. Played for Dan Panagio. His dad coached. Flip Saunders, rest in peace, was there. I was there, but he traded me.
Oh, really? Flip, really?
Wow. And the owner of the Flip was with the Lacrosse, I think they were the Redbirds.
He's actually from
and they had
so I'm from Cleveland, and Flip's from Cleveland, actually. I believe, I can't remember what area he's from, but I know he's from here, because every time he would come back and coach, they would talk about it.
Yeah, he was the coach, and they had their team was like everybody. The guards were 6'6", 6'5". That Kenny Battle, Stephen Bardo, those guys out of Illinois.
Yep.
They had Lloyd Hamilton. They had they had a squad. And Flip guess he didn't like I didn't fit in with those guys, but when I got traded, I made them pay. But yeah, Ann DeLong was the owner who helped get my life in order. So it was a lot of great people that really knew the game of basketball, allowed us a lot of freedom to play the game of basketball. And I owe my career to the CBA.
That's fantastic. I love hearing stories like that. When you first got into the NBA in '94, at that point, Chris, obviously you joined the New Jersey Nets. They had just the season before lost Drazen Petrovic, and that kind of set them back a little bit. They had a young DC, a young Kenny Anderson, Chris Morris, all those guys. You guys had a pretty nice squad. What if Drazen hadn't passed away, and they would have added you and that young nucleus of talent? What do you think you guys could have done?
Oh man, that team would have been awesome. I think Drazen, rest in peace, would have allowed Kenny and Derek to flourish even more than what they were able to, because once he passed, they had the bullseye on the chest. And the other guys that were around the team just weren't as consistent as Draw. So added some toughness too. So I would have loved to have played with him, alongside him, because I knew and watched him from afar, playing against him in some preseason games when I was trying out for other teams. I saw that fire and that love for the game, and not afraid to fail competitor. And so, we would have been tough to handle.
I think that's one of the questions when I look at all the '90s teams that could have been, I always think about Draws and what could have happened, because I knew that a couple years later they had, again, you and Armin, and you had 5 or 6, you had players. I mean, you guys had a squad, and Draws at that point when he died, I think he was averaging like 22 points a game, and Reggie
21, 22,
21 points a game, yeah. And Reggie Miller had said that he had the quickest release of any player he's ever seen. That's a pretty high compliment from Reggie. And it's just, I always maybe wonder what you guys could have been in the mid '90s with him, and then you and Armin, all those guys later on. But we'll never know. But I think it's one of those teams that would have been interesting, because back in '92 they played the Cavs. I grew up in Cleveland, so I'm a huge Cavs fan, and they played the Price, Doherty, Larry Nance Cavs. And I'll tell you what, I think Draws put up like 40 in one of the games. I mean, he could just, I've never seen anything like that before. He was a heck of a player. And the younger generation who follows my page doesn't know who he is. And I said, him and Reggie Lewis, both passed away back then, and they were both phenomenal players.
Right. But, rest in peace, Reggie too. Yeah, a lot of guys that play the 2-guard position should go back and watch some of the film, because I train kids now, and I tell them, everybody, I don't care where your shooting form starts at, it's all about where it finishes. And it's your footwork that gets you there. So if you watch any shot that Drazen would shoot, he always came back to the 7 points of shooting. His feet were always lined up back to the target. It doesn't matter if he was shooting a fadeaway or coming off a screen. He was just such a magician with his footwork. And that's what makes the players great, is those who, like, Michael Jordan was great. Yeah, he was an unbelievable athlete, but he had immaculate footwork. Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Julius, all the greats that played the game. People look at not the wrong thing, but they don't look at the thing that gets the guy to that point, and it's his footwork and his determination. But footwork is the key to anything you do on the basketball court. And Drazen had that. Plus, he was just hungry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember. I think he won at Jordan one of the games. I think he put up I can't remember how many points he put up against them, but I mean, he went up against everybody. He didn't care. I loved
Yeah, he
watching.
messed up, though. He messed up when he, tugged on that cape. He had one good game, he tugged on that cape, and
Yeah,
after that, it was.
yeah, that wouldn't have been a good idea. Yeah, I mean, one of the
Yeah,
things.
you can't tug.
No, not on that, not on MJ's cape, that's for sure.
No, go ahead, bro.
No. One of the things you're talking about footwork,
No, no.
and and you know, one of the guys I loved in the '90s was Akeem Olajuwon, '80s and '90s, and I thought when you look at his footwork, I think
Yeah,
Shaq was talking about how there was nobody that had, he moved unlike any other center in NBA history, and that's what made him so dominant. He wasn't the biggest guy, and he wasn't the tallest guy, but his footwork was
right,
almost like a point guard. They said Kenny Smith always said he has point guard moves in a center's body. And I always looked at Dream's footwork and I thought, wow. I mean, for a guy who's 6'10", 7 foot, to move like he did was incredible. And I don't know how many Dream stories you have, but another guy I love watching play, especially at that position back then. He was as dominant as any player I've ever seen when he was on his game.
right. And I had I was fortunate enough to play against him and with him
Toronto, right?
towards the end in Toronto. Yeah, but what made Dream so tough? It was his footwork, and it was his soccer background.
That's right.
He
He did
grew
have
up playing soccer,
that's right.
and so that's what the key was. And then it was his work that he didn't. He was a different type of center. He wasn't the quintessential big, powerful guy that was going to bang you. That we've had in the past. He was a new breed of center that can get out and run the floor, that can hit the mid-range jump shot, they have post moves, but what ended up making Hakeem great and them having success is when he learned how to pass out the double team. Because he started getting double team, and then, a lot of guys can't pass out the double team. First thing they want to do is pass it right back out where the ball came from. That's easy to rotate. So wherever the double team is coming, you got to throw it either to that guy or the guy across court, so you can make that rotation a lot difficult. And once Hakeem saw he was able, to start passing the double team, that's when the Rockets took off.
That's a great point. I never thought about that because, with all the shooters they had, with Ori and Sam Cassell and Vernon and all those guys, I mean, Kenny, and they were loaded back then. So you give those guys an open shot,
Matt
especially
Bullard,
Matt Bullard. That's right. I mean, Chili Pete, Pete Chilcutt. We had a ton of guys back then who can shoot.
Mario.
Mario. Oh, I mean, how can I forget Mario?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they were just, that's another team I loved watching was those mid-90s Rockets. But that's interesting about the double team because, watching LeBron in Cleveland for all these years, I think when he started making that skip pass is when, he could find anybody.
Yeah.
He was a great passer to begin with, but he started making this skip pass when he came back from Miami, and we had J.R. Smith and Kyrie on the other side, and it was over. I mean, when those guys are open and LeBron found them, and then, it was just they were tough to cover.
It's hard to rotate. It's hard to rotate when the ball is thrown back across court because you're going to rotate down as so if you don't have a good guy in the game, nothing you can do about it. Because LeBron is going to find them, Hakeem's going to find them. When Kareem was getting double teamed back in the day, and he would turn and go to magic, Shaq was a good passer. Shaq was getting double teamed, and he started trusting his teammates. And once he did that, then the game became so much easier for all of them.
No, that's a great point. That's a really good point.
See, I didn't mention Patrick. No, I just playing.
So,
no, I just playing. No, Beast.
So
Beast is good, man. Beast can pass out the double team.
I was so take us, you're in New Jersey for a couple seasons. What happened between then and New York? How did you get to New York, and what was that transition like from going from that Nets team to the Knicks?
I was a free agent because second year they still gave me, once the first year was over, they gave me a 1-year deal to still prove myself. And so after, my second year with New Jersey, I was averaging, I think, close to 15 points and actually 9 assists, right at 9, almost 10. And I know that last game of the season, we played the Knicks, and Derek Harper was the guard, and Derek and I, he was like my big brother at the time, because when I tried out with the Mavericks, he took me under his wing, gave me a car to drive around while I was there. He did so much for me. I owe a lot of my success to Derek as well. But we played him, and the tricks that he showed me, I used against him and ended up winning the game in the Garden. And so the Knicks came after me heavily, but, I owed a lot to the Nets, so I was going to give them first opportunity to sign me. But they ended up firing Butch Beard, Butch, Paul Silas, Jerry Eves, and Stan Albeck was the coaches, and there was some great guys out of basketball knowledge there. So
Oh yeah.
here comes John Calipari. This guy called me into his office. I'm putting him on blast because I don't like it. Calls me into his office. The whole time he's talking to me, he got his head down. And so at the time, I'm 27. I say, how about a little respect? I'm talking to you in the office, man to man. You can tell me how you feel. I don't have to agree with it. I can tell you how I feel. You don't have to agree with it, but don't not acknowledge me and have your head down while I'm trying to, we're negotiating here. So he lifts up, he got his comb, he's combing his hair back and stuff. Well, we're not sure we want to offer you, because we don't know if you can still. I said, hold on. I played 5 years in CBA, won a championship, came to Jersey, had a better record the next year starting for this team. And you're telling me I don't know how to run a ball club? Or I have to prove myself again? So they was only off 4 years. The Lakers offered me 5 years, and the Knicks offered me 6 years. So it was always a dream to play in the Mecca. So I didn't even have to pack.
That's true. You're right there.
I just drove it. I was right there. And so I think at the time, no, I wasn't there. I think I called my dad. I went home. Went back to California because I wanted to sign. I wanted to do it back home. And so I went home and got with the local newspaper. And I think I did it at home or at the church, and called New York and told them that I was going to sign with them. And didn't know at first. I don't know if I signed first or Allen Houston signed first, but we all committed at the same time. He, myself, and Larry Johnson.
Wow, what an off season for the Knicks.
Yeah, it was. Things were looking good, and for us for the '97 season.
So, going into that season and going into that next 3 or 4 years, really, you guys. I mean, in typical Knicks fashion, you guys were tough, gritty. Still had Ewing, still had Oakman for the first year. I think Anthony Mason had gone down to Charlotte, but you guys,
Right.
Obviously Latrell, you, Allen Houston, Charlie Ward. I mean, that was a pretty darn good team. When did you guys realize you were good enough? I mean, you guys made that run in '99, one of the most infamous finals runs, in the last 25 years. Did you guys always believe that you were good enough to get there, even without Patrick that year?
With Patrick getting hurt, it was tough, and it kind of set us because we had always been used to seeing the big fella there. So that's why we got off to a really slow start. Not only that, guys are still getting familiar with each other, especially with a short season. That's tough. But we knew once we, finally, allow guys to play their roles, or guys knowing their roles, and guys not trying to overdo more than they're capable of, then we start to click. I think we went out of 15 to get the 8th seed. And once we got in, because that's all we talked about, if we get in, we're not worried about Miami because we beat them every year. We should have beat them 4 years straight, to be honest, in the playoff. That '97 was a hoax because but we should have beat them 4 years straight. We would have beat the Bulls that year also. But once we got in, we knew we can beat Miami. We knew Indiana was going to be tough because Indiana beat us, I think, 3 out of 4 during the regular season that year. And those guys, you know, we hated the Heat, but we didn't really hate Indiana. We knew they were tough-minded. We knew they were a good team. We knew they was well coached. And we knew we couldn't have any slip-ups and it was going to be a series. So that was a different type of series. It wasn't any hatred. It was we respected them.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they respected us, and they competed. They had a lot of bigs on the team that can, you know, compete with our bigs. They had good shooting guards. They had good on-ball defenders. They had guys that can cause mismatch problems. So we knew it was going to be tough. But we went, you know, we swept the Hawks, and then we ended up meeting Indiana. We were surprised that the Hawks didn't put up much weight. Because you jump on them quick. They didn't have any fight in them. You know, after they get down, they fold. So nothing against the guys. You know, we were just different.
Mm-hmm.
And Indiana was one for the ages. They keep talking about the Miami series. Those Indiana games were tough.
That was the infamous LJ 4-point play, correct?
The 4-point play, and he did get fouled.
What did you say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said the 4-point. I said he did get fouled.
He did get fouled. Yeah.
It was a long situation, but he did get fouled.
Okay. Yeah, that's a play that's gone down.
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, that's the only photo I have in my house is that picture of the Harden going wild.
Yep. That was the last time the Knicks really. That was the last time you guys were really in the mix a lot.
Ain't that sad?
It is sad. I mean, with the Mecca of basketball, and it's been 20 years since they've really seen a team like, you know, what you guys brought in '99. But that, you know, that series.
Yes.
Did you? I mean, you were talking about Indiana and all this, how tough they were. You know, you had I think the Davis brothers and Rick Smits and Jalen and Mark Jackson and Reggie, and they were loaded. Travis Best, I believe, was on that team. You know, did you?
Travis Best
was Austin Crocier in that? I can't remember if he was in that team or not.
Nah, he wasn't on that team, but they had Derek McKee.
That's right, Derek McKee.
They had Hayward Workman. They had Byron Scott. They had the ex-Timberwolves coach named Mitchell.
Sam Mitchell. Yep.
Sam Mitchell. Big Sal Thompson.
LaSalle. Yep.
I mean, they were deep. They were deep.
So going up, you know, you beat Indiana, and obviously it's an emotional series. You guys really had 2 emotional series with Miami in the first round and then Indiana in the Eastern Conference Finals. Meeting the Twin Towers in the finals, I mean, that was because that was for, you know, Tim Duncan's first championship. But did you guys? I mean, if you guys would have had Patrick, do you guys see the series going a little bit differently, or do you think were those guys just too good, or what? What do you? What are you guys?
No, it would have been different because Patrick would have put pressure on both of those guys defensively. Could have got them in foul trouble. Losing a big body like that, those guys were just up there playing volleyball. LJ was hurt, so he gave his big shot. Kurt Thomas, you know, undersized. Marcus was able to do what he could do, you know, as much as he could, but he wasn't that physical.
Mm-mm.
So those guys were, you know, just unbelievable talent. And, you know, some days, you know, and Spree and Allen played their behind off, but some days you just have to realize you're outmatched.
Mm-hmm.
We gave it all. We played 2 tough series. A lot of guys were banged up, but everybody's banged up. So we gave it our best shot. I think we represented the Eastern Conference well. I think we represented the city of New York well. and we represented the team well, and we represented each other as players and men.
You did. And that, again, that, there's a lot of Knicks fans who follow my page, and you guys are still a team they talk about all the time, is that 99 team. And it seems to be a lot of the Knicks fans, it's one of those teams that they'll never forget. And it's a run that they'll never forget. And really that kind of defined the Knicks of the 90s was that final run. They made it in 94, obviously, with Starks and Mason and those guys. But that 99 run to me defined the era for the Knicks, grittiness, toughness, never giving up. And it was, as a fan, a casual fan, like we're not a casual fan, but as someone who wasn't from New York but was watching, that was just an awesome run to watch, because I didn't, as an 8th seed, I'm not going to lie, Chris, I didn't think you guys are going to get past Miami.
Yeah.
So when you guys made it to the finals, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, but like as a 8th seed, we weren't an 8th seed talent.
That's true. No, you're right. You're.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
We just had the 8th seed. We didn't care about numbers, because we knew the teams that were in our conference that we had to play, that we were better than them. They were just playing better at the time. And then once we got in the playoffs, when the lights come on, either you stand and fight or you scatter like roaches. And a lot of those guys scattered like roaches.
No, that's a great point about the talent. It reminded me a little bit of the 07 Warriors team, where they were the 8th seed against the Mavericks, and but really talent-wise with Barron and all those guys, I mean, they had a tremendous amount of talent. They were a top 3 seed if they were healthy the whole season.
You mean they reminded you of us because we were before them?
Yes, they reminded me of you, exactly. So,
yeah, okay.
You guys, that was kind of the original, I'm not going to call it a miracle team because you guys had the talent, but I mean, just the fact that you made it from the 8th seed all the way there, that's a heck of a run. You just don't see that in the NBA, even with a team as talented as you guys were. It's hard to do that. To beat the number 1 seed in the first round, no matter if you have enough talent or not, it's still a heck of an accomplishment,
Right, and losing your leading scorer, your captain, your leader, it can be a letdown. But one thing I recall is when Patrick got hurt, and he came in and spoke to the guys and the team, and he said, do it for yourself. Don't do it for me. And if you do it for the self, and I happen to be a part of that, then I'm grateful and I appreciate that. And so that kind of let guys relax, and just go out there and play. We took it, as men, as a challenge. You have to want to, meet a challenge head on and look them in the face. And we just looked the guys in the face man to man, because we didn't have to have Jeff motivate us or come to us and tell us, to do this. We policed each other. If one guy wasn't pulling his weight, we'd go to the room on the road or call him on the phone. Like, hey, man, you got to be better. And we never took offense to that. So that's what made that team so great and responsive to not normal circumstances of being an 8th seed and getting all the way to the finals. I'm going to cherish that for the rest of my life, because I was a part of something special. And the people in New York should cherish it, and I appreciate that they were able to get joy from us going out there to play a game that we love and represent the city of New York to the fullest.
Love it. Yeah, that's I could tell you just from all the comments that I get from people that they truly enjoy that team, because anytime I post, you or Spree or whoever I post, I mean, it just gets a ton of comments, and always a New York guy saying, love those late 90s Knicks teams. And again, that was an era of Knick basketball that they haven't seen in 20 years. I mean, with just playoffs every year and finals runs, and you just don't see that now. Back in those days, Chris, who, if you had to name 1 or 2 point guards that gave you the most problems on the defensive end, who would that be?
Oh, man. I mean, the obvious question, that era would be AI.
Mm-hmm.
But when they changed the rule, no hand checking, that gave him an advantage. But 2 guys that I feel personally, and I'm passionate about this, and I'm not trying to leave anybody else out, but Rod Strickland and Terrell Brandon, those cats were difficult.
I love that. So Terrell, that's because again, I'm a huge Cavs fan, and Brandon, I think in '97, I mean, obviously he made multiple all-star teams, but people forgot how great, because he was behind Mark Price for many years. So, a lot of people didn't really realize how talented he was. And when we knew in Cleveland he was, but the general media, they didn't really realize what he was all about until he got the chance to start. And he was phenomenal. I mean, I remember watching him every night as a kid.
Yeah,
And those teams with Bobby
yeah,
Phil, oh yeah, they had so Brand, interesting. I love Rod. I mean, that's a legend right there. I mean, Strickland, just watching him, I've never seen anybody so silky smooth before at the point guard position. And that, I think he retired 6th all time in NBA history in assists. I mean, that's incredible.
yeah. Rod, being 6'3", strong, being able to spin and finish with the hand in the air, and his shot was a push shot, but his body would put him in position to get the shot off against anybody. And you would never know if he was having a good game or a bad game because his expression on his face never changed. So you couldn't frustrate him. And then with Terrell, he had the herky-jerky, 6-foot long arms, big hands, big feet. He had the herky-jerky moves, and he had that quick dribble, 1 dribble pull-up or 2 dribble stop pull-up, and he was just a handful. But I enjoyed competing against those guys every night. And I'm pretty sure they would, say the same about our competitions, us playing. And I just like to give credit where it's due because nobody talks about those guys enough. It's easy to talk about the AIs and all the accolades, but for me, Rod Strickland and Terrell Brandon, beasts.
That's great. That's really interesting to hear because, you're right. I mean, you hear about AI, you hear about, GP and Stockton and all those guys, but Brandon and Rod are 2 guys that really never get the credit they deserve. And I for years with, Strickland, I've always said, I mean, I thought he was one of the best point guards in the entire era, and you really never hear his name mentioned very much. And, I don't know why, but I love watching Rod. And again, with Terrell, I grew up with Terrell in Cleveland. So he was, we always knew here that he was a great point guard, and he finally got a chance to prove it. And of course, right when he kind of broke out, they traded him, and he went to, I think, Milwaukee for a little bit. We got Sean Kemp here, and that was that whole big trade with Vin Baker and all those guys. But we had, Terrell started here for a couple years before he moved. He was just a tremendous talent. So one of the things I wanted to bring up to you, and I know you get this question all the time, is the Kobe incident in 2000. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Chris and Kobe kind of got into it on a national TV game. And, what precipitated that? Like, what was it, building all game, Chris? Was it something that he said to you, or was it just spur of the moment type of thing?
Well, first of all, I just want to say rest in peace to a brother. I really don't think it's fair to even talk about that anymore. I just want it to be that was something that occurred in a game. A lot of that happened in that era, fisticuffs, getting into it, but to elaborate on it, I'd rather not.
Okay. I completely understand that. When you, looking back at your NBA career, besides the obvious of going to the NBA Finals in 99, is there a favorite moment? One moment you look back on, you're like, besides that, you're thinking that was an awesome moment for my career.
I think it was a couple. I know initially signing with the Knicks, probably us going to the finals. The year, I think 97, I think it was 97, the year we didn't have an all-star game. I think I was first or second in the league in three-point shooting.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I would have made it to the all-star game that year in the three-point shooting contest because back then it was stats. You had to shoot so many threes and shoot a certain percentage, and so I was either 1 or 2 at the time. But I just think that 99 run when nobody thought that we could do it, and the closeness of that team, how we came together, even though there's a lot of differences with certain players didn't get along. We set that to the side for the betterment of the team, and so I'll never forget that. And then, one of the most important things that happened to me in my NBA career is, I prided myself on always interacting with the fans, whether they were signing autographs after the game, or even when I was in New Jersey, when I was staying in the Sheraton Hotel in the Meadowlands in Secaucus, and kids were outside, I would stop and sign autographs. But the gratification, I'm not just saying that, because I want, people to think I'm a good guy, but I am a good guy, and I understand what the fans go through. And so I say that to mention this. There was a kid that I met through my years playing the NBA, and I remember I would come home, excuse me, and he'd be dribbling the basketball, and you can tell the difference if a guy knows how to play or he doesn't know how to play by the sound of the ball. So I'm hearing the ball, how it's bouncing. I'm like, this kid doesn't know how to play. So I go outside and I help him and talk to him. He was an African kid. He was adopted. And so long story short, I did that for about 6 months, and the kid ended up leaving. And so long story short, 3 years ago, the kid emails me, Facebook or Instagram, and lets me know that he appreciated me taking time out to even talk to him, not just about basketball, about life, and that it encouraged him to become a doctor.
Really?
And yeah, and he became a doctor, and he said, I was the reason why. And you're talking about a man, balling. I don't get too emotional in my older years, but that's what this whole thing of life and playing basketball and being around the fans, that's what it's all about. Because you never know who you might meet, what people are going through in life. And they, it doesn't take you but about 15 to 20 seconds, maybe, to say some kind of words to someone that might not ever normally get a chance to meet a celebrity, a sports figure, or whatever. And so if any of the younger guys that play this game, older guys, whoever, listen to this, just take a minute to tell somebody something nice, a fan, a kid, anybody, Joe Schmo, something nice, because you never know what that person might be going through, and it might uplift them to make their day a better day.
That's so true. That's an incredible story. It's really neat that he reached out to you and told you that. That's got to make you feel like $1 million. That's a heck of a story. And you're right. That is what life's all about.
Yeah, it means more to me than anything.
No, I could see why. I mean, as I've gotten older, Chris, that's one of the things I've realized. I have 5 nephews now, and they look up to me, and it's fun to go over there and kind of teach them things that I learned when I was younger, and kind of as an uncle, it's a different type of relationship than it is as a father. But it's I'm kind of the fun person who does things with them and messes around, et cetera, and sports and all that. But it's just something I take very seriously, and helping other people as well as you get older. That's what life's all about. So I appreciate you saying that. I have a couple more questions for you before we go.
One more thing. I got 2 guys that I follow and that I do their show. Well, it's a few guys. It's At Game Podcast, Knicks Community with Aiden, and then Luke's Life. These are all young kids that I've been on their show and that I still communicate with. And anybody follow those guys, they're young kids doing something that they love. They're Knicks fans, so follow them. They're good kids.
There you go. You heard everybody. Follow those accounts on Instagram. A couple more questions for you before we go here. When you're talking about, we were just talking about the younger generation. If for a young kid who never saw you play, Chris, how would you describe your game, and what do you want your legacy to be, as you go on here?
Well, like I, tell the kids that I train, I didn't do one thing great, but I try to do everything good. I wasn't the highest jumper. I wasn't the best shooter. I wasn't the fastest guy, but I wouldn't allow anybody to outwork me. And so when people, talk about Chris Childs and how he played, and some guys say bad things, some guys say good things. That's fine. That's what life is all about. Everybody has an opinion. But one thing they can say is that when I stepped on the court, I came to play. You got your money's worth. And I was just a guy that enjoyed competing, that wasn't afraid of the moment, wasn't afraid to take the big shot, wasn't afraid to play against the best players, the top scorers. I guarded them all. And I'm only 6'2", 6'3", but my heart is 7 feet. And so any legacy that, people can put on me or remember me is that I left it all on the floor every night, every practice, every shoot around. I enjoyed the pressure of the game, and I love that city of New York.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, I think you were always known as, one of the most gritty and tough players of that generation. And I think, again, for the young kids who never saw Chris play, he kind of epitomized toughness and never giving up, and really what that 99 Knicks team epitomized. So I'll leave you with this. What are you up to these days? And do you have anything that you want to tell the audience?
I'm just down here enjoying retirement. I mentor young males. I train high school kids. I have college kids. I have guys that are going overseas, pro kids. We're out, COVID set us back a lot, but we still went outside and ran on the beach, flipped tires, old school stuff. I enjoy it. I enjoy giving back. I enjoy mentoring, helping young men become exceptional males. It's just a passion. Like I said, I got to go train in the morning at 5 o'clock. I get up every day and do this because these kids want to get better. And, I got guys that are 25. That's when I made it. And I've seen in their eyes that they want to give up. And I give them my story of how long it took me to make it. So don't let the age deter you from realizing your dream. Just continue to fight and battle and give yourself every opportunity to make it. Because if you quit, there's no turning back.
No, there's not. You're right.
And also, and I feed the homeless down here in Jacksonville 2 to 3 days a week. I'm just giving back. I golf. I'm an avid golfer, and I love to fish. So I'm just keeping myself busy and enjoying life.
That's great. That's what retirement's all about. Well, Chris, really appreciate you being on the show, and you're welcome back anytime. And love our talk. It was it's I appreciate you. I know you follow the page, and you've been one of my supporters over the last 9 months as I really kind of took off. So again, appreciate everything you do, and loved you back in the day. That's all I can say about that. You were definitely one of the fun players to watch back in that era, and one of the toughest players I got to watch. So appreciate it.
Hey, thank you very much, and continued success. I'll continue to follow, continue doing what you're doing, and giving guys a platform to just talk about, the game. And it's not to put down the new generation, because they're going to eventually tell their story to another generation. So long as we keeping this going, it's good dialogue back and forth. So my pleasure, continues blessings, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good, Chris. Appreciate it. Have a good one, my man.
All right, have a good one. All right, you too.